Today, nearly 60 white South Africans were admitted into the United States. It's part of President Donald Trump's resettlement program for white Afrikaners.
The president made it clear that Afrikaners in South Africa who were the victims of unjust racial discrimination would be welcome to come to the United States, and he's now delivering on that promise.
Applications from these white families were fast-tracked by the administration, even as it suspended the U.S. refugee resettlement program, leaving thousands of approved refugees worldwide stranded.
And you want me to speak in Afrikaans, right?
Well, then I won't know what you're saying. I don't speak any Afrikaans because I grew up in Swaziland, a neighbouring country, and it's ex-British colonial country, and so we learned English, and we didn't want to learn Afrikaans because that was the language of oppression pushed through the Bantu education system, and yet that's my roots. My ancestor is General Christian de Wet. Went on the Great Trek, fought the Boer War as a general. So I'm very Afrikaans on one level, and I'm very born in England, left when I was 6 months, but I consider myself African, white African.
My ancestry is Boer and from French descent with the French Huguenots, and I speak Afrikaans as my native tongue. So ek is 'n Afrikaner in merg en been.
My roots are here, and my contribution is here. I feel like, this is my home. I don't want to go away from my home.
So if you two were to have kids, would they be Afrikaners?
Definitely. And they would speak Afrikaans
I would
because
want
we
them
would
to
live
speak
here.
Afrikaans, yeah.
Sono metà italiano, metà surafricano. Io posso parlare la lingua di Afrikaans. Ho un rapporto speciale con la lingua di Afrikaans e sentite che ho l'accento proprio strano, diciamo. I myself don't identify as an Afrikaner. My father being Italian and my mother being South African, primarily of English descent. But culturally I do have a relationship with Afrikaans which has really enriched my life. Ek is 'n Suid-Afrikaner van Italiaanse afkoms. Ek sal sê dat ek 'n spesiale verhouding met die taal het, die taal van Afrikaans. Ek praat dit graag en jy kan wel hoor dat ek 'n belaglike aksent het.
Afrikaners are Africans, but we are also Westerners. It is here in Africa where we became who and what we are. However, politically, you can only talk about the bad things done by Afrikaners, while it is regarded as extremely politically incorrect to discuss the contributions of the Afrikaners, of which there are obviously many.
So I can't think of anything else but envy. When you leave these Afrikaners to their own devices, they're going to erect something, and guess what? It's going to work. It's going to damn well work.
Ek eet, ek slaap, ek droom in Afrikaans. Ek is Afrikaans gebore, ek is so Afrikaans soos jy hulle kan kry. Maar ek is nie wit nie, nê? So onmiddellik as jy vir my sê, en dit is altyd dit lei altyd tot 'n lekker bespreking. As jy vir my sê dit is 'n witmanstaal, onmiddellik ontneem jy my voorvaders van hulle bydra tot die ontstaan van Afrikaans. En dit in syself is so verkeerd. Die term Afrikaner aan die begin nog van die 18de eeu was daai term juis gebruik vir mense vir die nie blanke bevolking. Okay, dit is jou slawe, jou kooi en so aan. So daai term het eers verwys, die term Afrikaner het eers verwys na jou swart bevolking. Wat was Trump se eintlike doel? Ek as 'n swart Afrikaans sprekende persoon sal nie kwalifiseer om oor te gaan nie, hoewel ek vir myself 'n Afrikaner kan noem, ek kan myself 'n Afrikaan noem, ek kan myself 'n Afrikaanse noem, hoewel ek Afrikaans sprekend is, kwalifiseer ek nie daarvoor nie. So sy doel was nie om Afrikaans sprekende mense, sy doel was om Afrikaner of wit mense daar te kry. Hoekom kan Afrikaners nie almal wees wat Afrikaans praat nie?
The outside definition has always been very strong because of the Afrikaner nationalist project. So that's where the sort of very strong claims to language, to soil, to blood, to race, those things started, and that was an external political project. So the one thing that we can do as other Afrikaners is say, well, you take that term and do with it what you want to do with it. I'm just distancing myself from it. But I don't necessarily want to distance myself from all the things that Afrikanerdom has, the language, the literature, the music, the creativity, the ingenuity of Afrikaans people over the years. But I also want to give it a broader term, especially also in terms of race. When certain Afrikaners say we are victims, we want to be refugees, etc., that is imposed by a very specific right-wing populist political project. And what we are seeing now again is people saying, no, not in my name, I refuse that, I resist that, I don't see myself reflected in that identity. There's always been dissent in the ranks, right? There's always been people that use very form of cultural and political expression to say, well, that's not what I am, that's not how I see myself. You have a word in Afrikaans called weerbarstig, like against the stream. There's a certain sort of resistance identity, I think, built in the whole way in which Afrikaners, of whatever political flavor, there's always that sort of resistance, that sort of contrarianism. And I think that can be harnessed for good, can be harnessed for progressive ends as well.
Okay, so I'm not a farmer, my husband is not a farmer, that's true. And we don't personally know anyone who was a victim of farm attacks or farm murders, that's also true. But we have our own very valid reasons for leaving, okay, that's none of your business. And also people who were making nasty comments when I said I don't watch the news. But I'm sure I speak for many Afrikaners when I say that we stopped watching the news when they ended 7 Alarm. And also the news was on right after 7 Alarm, so sometimes we'd get lekker comfortable in our couch and then we'd somehow watch the news. So when we heard that there was no more 7 Alarm, we knew it was the beginning of the end.
I see Afrikaners in the past as very racist people. I would play with small white guys until one day I was thrown with stones by other neighbors, and I was called a whatnot or something, and they started to beat me. And the lady herself was a white lady, and she protected me basically from these things. So I grew up from that age with a hatred towards white people, because until I joined the struggle and I met some white comrades also, some of them Afrikaners, and I grew loving these people because I saw them not as white whatever, because I saw them as people with a good heart and good intentions, just like anyone else. The Boers I saw as the enemy, in terms of they were the whites telling us that they were the Boers and they were superior to us. After apartheid, when apartheid was so-called gone, and we got our so-called freedom also basically, they were not seen as the privileged people under Mandela and the Zuma and Mbeki. They were seen as South Africans, and they felt quite hurt because they were not seen as number one. And you start to see whites, especially on the streets of South Africa, begging and doing these things which we never saw before. And we also realized that these people are not better than anyone else because they can also fail like anyone else, and it's not different between them and others. We are sitting on the brink of a third world war. And the people who are going to suffer is not going to be the whites or the blacks, whatever, it's going to be the poor. So if there's going to be poor people amongst all of these races, they're going to suffer the most because the elite don't care about them. And people must start to unite and tell each other, as the poor, that we are no different from anyone else. As long as people are divided, whatever means, by race, by religion, whatever, there's going to be war, and the ones affected mostly will always be the poorest of the poor. The battle of today is not between the color of the skin. The battle is between who have and who don't have, the rich and the poor.
Well, you know, I mean, yeah, I just think there are more. I mean, I think whiteness needs to deal with these issues, but I wonder why it's allowed to take up so much space. Very little has been done to ensure some kind of recognition and process for those families, for those black families to heal, whereas white families have just managed to get on with their life. What we're having is continued brutalization by silencing, by erasure, by this insinuation that you shouldn't talk about certain things because they're uncomfortable for whiteness, they're uncomfortable for Afrikaners. But they're also uncomfortable for English-speaking white people, you know, the majority of whom voted for the National Party before the last democratic election in South Africa. So, you know, I mean, more English-speaking white people voted for the National Party in the last all-white election in South Africa. I mean, that says also something about the complexity around whiteness and who is to blame and who doesn't want to be blamed.
One of the narratives is that what happens on farm is that those attacks are to rape and murder white women. So white women are positioned as the victims. But the bulk of the violence, from a gender-based violence perspective, the victims are black or brown. Afrikaner culture, it is very patriarchal. Some of the women who left with their husbands and children to the USA, they make the point that the decision was the husband's decision to migrate. People like me are often called traitors to their people, right? So I'm a traitor Afrikaner. And, you know, even though it doesn't matter, it still hurts because of the fact that we are not reckoned as Afrikaners. I'm part of the democratic project. I feel at ease in this country. I'm a political scientist, so I'm critical of a lot of things. But I doing my part, and my part is not leaving the country and saying that I've been victimized. Yeah. Segregating yourself from what is happening in the country is not productive and constructive.
Welcome to the United States of America. We respect the long tradition of your people. As you know, a lot of you, I think, are farmers, right? When you have quality seeds, you can put them in foreign soil and they will blossom, they will bloom. And then we will bloom and we will benefit alongside you. So thank you very much for coming here.